place too many where it's just flip through them. It took me like 10 minutes just to flip through it. I always do that first. Yeah, but I still didn't see any opposition. That's why I think before. Okay. And then she said there was no opposition.
Okay. You can't.
Right. Started recording. What's our releases going to the spaceship?
We'll be returning on July 2nd, so we're staying
How you doing? I'm gonna say the last night I was here was freezing. Very cold. Right.
So the reason we decided to do that is because we have beautiful beaches. So also so we can do some hanging out on the beach, hiking. Keep my family in the city for too long. Everybody is graduating outside some exercise, get outdoors, I sort of started doing some research on best brands. It's very crowded. And it's
very different.
Very much on the way. Right around the time
It's true with even last time.
Just go to Sultan's Eye. Nice, perfect. That's pretty nice. Vacation. Nice stuff. When are y'all gonna do that? First 2 weeks in July. Wife's cousin was very generous. That's nice. Wonderful. Never said no. Yeah, it's a perfect.
So y'all going to the beach?
Your phone. All right, it's 5:15, so we'll go ahead and get started. This is the June 20th, 2023 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals. Zoning present here today. We have a full board. Allison Grass, Howell Morrison, Robin Richards, John Bennett, Bill Goodwin Jr., Chappie McKay, and me, your chair, Jeff Tibbles. Present from the planning staff today are Lee Batchelder, Penny Ashby, Allison Craig, zoning staff, Lee Batchelder, Penny Ashby, and Allison Craig. From the planning staff, Omar Muhammad is joining us as well. So we have a full board and a full agenda, so we'll try to get through this as quickly as we can. These proceedings are being recorded, and we ask that those who speak please identify yourself for the record. We will conduct this meeting in the usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and the recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. The Board of Zoning Appeals usually, but not always, approves uncontested applications. For all applications, the board reserves the right to ask questions of the staff, applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application, or if there is opposition to the application, we treat the matter as a contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals zoning has the authority to do three things. Number one, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Number two, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And number three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum is present and qualified to vote. However, an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board members present and voting shall be required before a use variance may be granted. For variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by granting the variance. I'm required by ordinance to swear you in if you intend to speak. So if you do intend to speak, please raise your right hand Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You'll signify by saying, I do. Thank you. We do have a couple of deferrals on our lengthy agenda tonight, and those are found agenda under section B, new applications. And those two applications that are being withdrawn are number 13 for 71 Bull Street and number 16 for 128 Romney Street. So if you're here for one of those applications, they won't be heard tonight. You can go about your business. So let's start with A under our agenda, review of minutes and deferred applications from previously advertised BZA-Z agendas. Number one is review of the minutes of the May 2nd, 2023 board meeting, and that was a long time ago. So to remind my board members who was present, Mr. Bennett, Ms. Grass, Mr. Goodwin, and Mr. McKay. So one of you can make the motion to approve.
Move for approval.
Do I have a second? Second. All right. And the four of you can vote to approve those minutes. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. The motion passes. The minutes are approved. Item A2 on our agenda, 193, 195, and 197 Jackson Street, East Side, TMS number 459-05-01-047, zoned LB, requesting approval from section 54-317 to amend the conditions of the BZA-Z approval on May 7, 2019 that prohibit a restaurant use in 193 and 199 Jackson Street and the yards behind these buildings, to permit one food truck to be stored and operate behind 193 Jackson Street as shown on the site plan with no increase in restaurant patron use area. The owner is Mount Vernon Partners, LLC, Cameron Claus. Applicant is Kevin Hartdorfer. Mr. Batchelder.
This was presented at our last meeting and deferred by the board with the request that the applicant reach out to the church next door and see if they could get something in writing or something from the church indicating their position. So I'll just quickly run through this. The properties in question are located on Jackson Street, just east of Meeting Street. Their own limited business, as is shown on this zoning map. And limited business allows for a variety of uses, including restaurants, bars, that kind of thing. But the hours cannot extend past 11 p.m. And so that's what was, and back in 2019, the board granted approvals to allow these buildings that looked like this back then to be restored and put back into use. They had been sitting vacant for a number of years and were approaching the point of no return. And so this applicant stepped forward and took on the mighty task of restoring these buildings. And they now look like this. The commercial uses in these buildings were very specific on the plan that was adopted back in 2019. And it restricted the restaurant bar spaces to the two buildings in the middle. So that's 195 and 197 Jackson Street. And the yard areas behind those buildings. So the two buildings on either end, the one that you see to the right, which is off this screen, not part of the application, and the one on the far left in this image, which is 193 Jackson Street. Got those addresses correct on it. Yeah. So those two buildings were not allowed to be used for restaurant use, and those yards behind those buildings were not allowed to be used for restaurant use. And the purpose of this application is to amend the conditions of that 2019 approval to allow this food truck to be parked behind 193 Jackson Street. So zoning map, and this is the layout, and you can see that the you can see that this space behind 193 Jackson Street, this yard is quite large compared to the other property, other buildings. So they would like to be able to park this food truck behind 193 Jackson Street to allow it to function as a kitchen for the restaurant space that's behind and within 195 and 197 Jackson Street. And plan, a little bit difficult to read, but this kind of shows you in these cross-hatched areas, the patron areas within and behind 195 and 97 Jackson Street. And more images. So there's no change to those patron areas. The only change would be to amend the conditions to allow that food truck behind 193 as is shown here. In the patron area, there won't be any patron area. Patrons will not be allowed to go over to the food truck. It will strictly function as a kitchen, and then the food will be brought into the patron areas behind these two properties. That is the request. Before I get to that, so I had recommended approval with some conditions last time, and but the board had concerns about the church next door, which I guess would be maybe 191 Jackson Street, and so the applicant can speak to this, but they indicate that they were not able to get anything in writing or on the record from church, but apparently they have indicated that they do not stand in opposition to what is being requested tonight. And the conditions that I recommended were as follows. They would be restrictions based on the day of the week, Monday through Wednesday. There would not be any amplified sound above normal conversational levels during the day, and there would not be any drums. That's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Music stops at 10 p.m. After that, no amplified sound above normal conversational levels and no live music. That's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And Sunday, the music stops at 8 p.m. And after that, no amplified sound above normal conversational levels and no live music. So these are restrictions to restrict the restaurant operation and what it does. When this was originally approved in 2019, there were no restrictions except the zoning restriction that says you have to close operations at 11 p.m. So this is a way to compromise, in effect, that I think will help the neighbors. And so I think there were some neighbors here last time. There may be neighbors here today, but I don't think there was any opposition when this came up before. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Lee. Is there anyone here in opposition to the request for 193, 195, and 197 Jackson Street? If you're in opposition, raise your hand. All right, we have no one in opposition, so is there anything that the applicant would like to ask?
Per the board's request, I was able, I guess you showed the, I just want to say we did have a conversation.
Please state your name for the record.
Ken Skidmore, one of the owners. And we were able to speak with the church, and though they're standing neutral, it's, they are not in opposition to what we're doing. So wanted to clarify per your all's request.
So is the opposition in the detailed emails we've got, materials, that's different from the church issue. These are just neighbors in and opposite head out.
Yes, those are neighbors, and I believe some of them were here last time.
We did have a couple of neighbors speak last meeting, or last time this came up.
So, on your conditions, may I ask one question? When you have this phrase, no amplified sound or music above normal conversation level, that sounds kind of like a redundancy to me. You either have amplified music or you don't. If you don't have any amplification, you're not above normal conversation level. I just think you're in trouble when you say no amplified music above conversational level. Either have it or you don't.
Well, it's not uncommon to have these places with amplified sound, but at, not above the conversations of the people who are in the establishment. And that's the language that I've been using, and it's been approved on a number of occasions. So
What is the sanction going to be if these kind of violations continue to occur? Either this lady, Ms. Cox, and this other couple of people. And then I missed last meeting, I'm sorry, I didn't hear them speak, they were here, but there's another lady out, Hassan Foods, and one or two others, but what are we going to do if they breach the conditions? Are we going to automatically withdraw disapproval if we grant it?
now, if they violate these conditions, if the board were to approve this with these conditions, it would be new to the property and violated these conditions, and that would be a zoning violation that we would pursue in the livability court.
Well, then, we're not conditioning this approval for the food truck really on obeying these conditions. We're saying go to another venue, livability court. If you breach these, and livability court's already available to these people who are offended by this noise.
Right. But I think the issue with these people have may be some of the operations that occurred during the permitted hours of operation. And if they don't, if the board denies this request, then we're back to square one, which is they can operate a restaurant on, behind, within and behind those two buildings until 11 p.m. with no restrictions.
So these restrictions cover all the properties or just one where the food trucks go?
Well, it covers the three properties where the food truck would be placed and where the restaurant actually operates, 195 and 197. The third or the fourth property, which is closest to Meeting Street, does not have any restaurant use in it. So it's not permitted.
Do you feel like these conditions address those comments in the emails?
Well, I hope they do, because right now there's no conditions, no restrictions on the operation prior to 11 p.m. So this is an improvement over what currently exists.
The relationship with the church in the last meeting, I think you said you had a good relationship. So you emailed them, is how we?
No, I actually spoke with Deacon Williams in person Sunday morning. I went to church and spoke with him, and they voted to have a neutrality on signing anything, but told me verbatim that he was not standing in opposition to what we do with our property.
Further questions for the city or for the applicant?
I do actually have one question. Special, when you say no live music, is that after 10 p.m. or is that at all times? I just want clarification on that. Is that
After 10 p.m.
okay?
I have one question on Sunday. What time would music start?
Sunday?
I mean, we're fine with regulating, however, but we don't open until after 1. We do it as a courtesy for the church so that they have parking.
I don't do friendly adjustment. If 1 o'clock is your time, maybe suggest that they have no music before 1 o'clock and then they subside at 8. That way there's not some special day and somebody forgets and next thing you know, you've got competing music next door during the service.
Questions or discussion? Okay. So the motion is to approve the amendment to the motion to approve to amend the conditions of the May 7, 2019 approval by the BZA-Z with the conditions that are set forth here. And are you adding the condition as well on Sunday that music is not starting until 1 p.m.?
I'd like to add that condition.
So the motion on the floor is to approve the requested amendment with the conditions that on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, there will be no amplified sound above normal conversational levels and no drums. On Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the music stops at 10 p.m. After that, no amplified sound above normal conversational levels and no live music. And on Sunday, no music before 1 p.m. Music stops at 8 p.m. After that, no amplified sound above normal conversational levels and no live music. Is that okay? I have a second. All right, Ms. Grass seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously. The approval is granted with the conditions as stated.
Mr. Dennis, please, who made the motion, please?
Mr. McKay made the motion and Ms. Grass seconded the
Thank you,
motion.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next section in our agenda is B, new applications. B number 1 is 2326 Sunnyside Avenue in Wagner Terrace, TMS number 464-13-00-050, zoned SR-1, requesting a special exception under section 54-110 to extend a non-conforming building footprint with a rear second-foot addition in place of an existing roof terrace, bedroom, office, sunroom, and a rear one-story screened porch addition having a 1.9 foot west side setback, 9 feet are required. The owner is Taylor Gates. The applicant is John Douglas Tucker, architect. Mr. Batchelder.
This is a residence in Wagner Terrace, and the zoning map is pretty accurate with regard to the placement of the buildings on the lots, and you'll see that the buildings tend to hug the west side property line. And this house has a 1.9 foot west side setback. So 9 feet is required, there's only 1.9 feet. So what they're proposing to do is build rear additions to the existing house. So I'll just explain that. These drawings, these are photographs of the existing house and the space to the west of that house right there, driveway. And these are rear views of the existing house. And so what they're going to do is basically build an addition to replace this second floor deck up here. And then they'll build an addition off this western part of the first floor. And view, these are views of the existing decks. So existing condition, this is a second floor deck up here. This is a ground floor deck. And this area becomes an enclosed addition to the main house on the second floor. And this is the enclosed area on the first floor. So they're just adding conditioned living space. Well, this is a screen porch, I believe, on the first floor. And then on the second floor, you can see that these rooms get enlarged, so they add bedroom living space. And side view, this is go to the west side. This is the major change right here. So the existing is shown on the bottom, proposed on the top, and you can see change here, this section here to below. And then this is the one-story addition on the west side. So it becomes a special exception to extend that non-conforming building footprint further back on each floor. And it's a finding by the board that light and air impacts won't adversely affect the neighboring property. In this case, the applicant has supplied signatures from neighboring property owners, a number of neighboring property owners, including the most affected neighbor at 2328 Sunnyside, Mac Hill, and other neighbors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 neighbors total, indicating that they're fine with the proposal. So we believe they met the special exception requirements and we recommend approval.
All right, thank you, Lee. Is there anyone here in opposition to the application for 2326 Sunnyside Avenue? If you're here in opposition, just raise your hand. All right, seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owner or applicant here? Like to say to the board? All right. Any questions for the city? Any questions for the applicant? Discussion. Do I hear a motion? Mr. Morrison moves to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Goodman seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously, and the special exception is granted. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is B2460 Cessna Avenue, Citadel Woods, TMS number 350-09-00-191, zoned DR9, requesting a variance from section 54-301 to allow an 8-foot fence along the rear property line adjacent to the greenway, 6-foot height limitation. The owner applicant is Michael Eppert. Mr. Batchel.
This is an existing home in Citadel Woods in West Ashley. And you see here on the map that it backs up to the greenway. That's the green strip on this zoning map. And like other applications that we've had recently, people are experiencing a loss of privacy because of Dominion. I guess it was Dominion that went in there and cut down vegetation behind these homes. So before, lots of vegetation blocked the views. Now, in the upper left, when people are on the greenway, they're, because of the elevation change, that's an old railroad bed, that's much higher than yards. People see right into the yards, even with a 6-foot fence. So these owners are requesting an 8-foot fence on that rear property line only, so only in the highlighted area on this map. The rest of the fencing would remain 6 feet. And I feel like they meet the variance test because of these conditions and recommend approval.
Thank you, Lee. Is anyone here in opposition to the application for 460 Cessna Avenue? All right, seeing no one in opposition, is the owner applicant here? Anything out of the board? All right, do we have any discussion, questions for Lee, questions for the other applicant? Ms. Grass moves to approve. Mr. Bennett seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously and the variance is granted for 460 Cessna. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is B3, 10, and 10.5 Lanier Street, Charlestown. PMS number 457-16-01-064 and 063, zoned SR3, requesting a special exception under section 54-110 to allow a detached accessory building open dining pavilion that extends a non-conforming 0-foot rear setback. 3 feet are required. The owner is 10 Legree Street LLC, Scott and Nancy Santee. Applicant is Glenn Gardner, landscape architect. Mr. Batchelder.
These two properties are joining and they're owned by the same person. As you'll see, 10 Legree is the front, the main house on this property. 10.5 is what was the dependency building to 10 Legree. That at some point in its history was subdivided. We don't allow that kind of subdivisions anymore, but years ago it was subdivided, so it's 2 separate lots record, and that is the reason for this coming to the board, because the addition that's being proposed is on 10 Legree behind the main house, right at the back, right at the property line that separates 10. So let's see, I'll just, this is the survey, skip to this drawing right here, and I have a large view of this image. See the 2 buildings. So this is the main house on 10 Legree, and there is a proposal is to construct this building addition right here. It's the area outlined with the blue dashed line, and the property line that separates 10 and a half is along this line right here. So it's right up against the rear property line for 10 Legree, and setback required off that property line to do this. And 3 feet, so we're talking about a 3-foot setback from the property line that separates the 2 properties, both owned by the same person. So obviously they're not opposing their own request, and it's a 1-story building addition, which is, see it here, right here, as part of this major, I guess, renovation of this garden. And the applicant spoke to the 2 property owners to the south, who would be the only property owners that could actually see this building, and they are fine. He indicates that they verbally said that they were fine with this. So unusual situation, but thought it should go to the board, so my recommendation is approval.
All right, thank you, Lee. Anyone here in opposition to the application for 10 and 10.5 Legree Street? Anyone is raising their hand, so we have an uncontested application. Do we have the owner or applicant here? Are there anything you'd like to say to the board?
Not really, other than the fact that in time these will be recombined with one property once they're complete with construction and ready to move in. At that point, it's technically the various needs needed, but that hasn't happened.
Questions, discussion, do I hear a motion? Move to approve. All right, Mr. Morrison moves to approve. Mr. Goodwin?
Second.
All right, Mr. Goodwin seconds. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously, and the special exception for 10 and 10.5 degrees. Thank you. Next item on our agenda, B4, 7 Ninth Street, Burns Downs. PMS number 421-01-00-145, zoned SR2, requesting a special exception under section 54-110 to allow a vertical extension, second story, bedrooms, bathrooms to a non-conforming building footprint having a 7.2-foot north side setback, 9 feet are required. The owner is BK Real Estate Investments, LLC. The applicant is Arwin Studio, LLC, Patrick Orvis. Mr. Battel.
This is a home in Burns Downs, shown here on the zoning map. It has a, this is a request for a special exception on the north side property line. It has a 7.2-foot north side setback, 9. So it's a smaller encroachment into that side setback than what we just heard, but it is an encroachment. So the proposal is to construct a 2-story or a second-story addition to the back of this 1-story home. They want to maintain the character of the existing home, which is like many homes in Burns Downs, a 1-story home, and not change the main house roof, though they could if they wanted to, I guess, but rather change the back portion of the house. So I've highlighted that area where they would add that second story. And in view, looks like this with bedroom, bathroom additions, and roof here. So this is the proposed south elevation, and which is actually the side facing the affected neighbor. It's actually, the architect calls this the south elevation because you're looking south, although it would be the north facing elevation. And you see the rear view right here, and more images of how that would look in front of the property. So the applicant does have the support of a few neighbors with these letters, and that includes 9 10th Street. John Mabry, I think is his name, and that is the most affected neighbor. That's the neighbor on the side where the encroachment exists today. So special exception, slight airflow impacts on the neighbor, and they're not objecting. So I think they've met the special exception requirements, and I think it is a nice way to add some space to the home without altering the character of the original.
Thank you, Lee. Do we have anyone here in opposition to the application at 7 10th Street? So raise your hand. I see no one raising their hand. Do we have the owner of the applicant? All right, anything you'd like to say to the board?
Just like to add, in addition to the 5 letters of support that we submitted to the city, we reached out to the 20 surrounding neighbors most impacted with letters and all of the drawings that.
Okay, thank you. And you are Mr. Orphis, correct? Yes. All right, any questions for the city? Questions for the owner applicant? All right, Mr. McKay moves to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Goodwin seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously, and the special exception for 7 10th Street is granted. Next item on our agenda is B5, 3 Murphy Court, Radcliffe Borough. TMS number 460-16-03-128, zone DR2, requesting a special exception under section 54-110 to allow a rear 2-story addition, kitchen expansion, bathroom, closet that extends a non-conforming 0.5-foot east side setback, 3 feet are required. Requesting a variance from section 54-301 to allow a two-story addition having a 38% lot occupancy, 35% limitation, existing lot occupancy 36%. Owners are Paul and Catherine McCaffey. The applicant is Amber Oman. Mr. Batchelder.
This is a rear addition to a two-story house, Backcliff Borough. This image, you see the backs of the houses on the south side of Murphy's Court. So 3 is highlighted here. You see 1 to the left and 5 and 7 to the right. All very similar homes, single houses. And each of those other houses has a rear addition, though it's not 2 stories. So in the zoning map, you see those houses here. Right here. So this is the proposed addition to the rear of the existing house. And it doesn't violate the rear setback, which only is required to be 3 feet. So that's really not an issue. In fact, even with the addition, it's still 24, 10, 25 feet from the rear property line. So it's just that east side setback encroachment is being extended. And images of the existing deck, you see at the back of the house. A photo of the adjoining properties. And then this image shows and explains what the additions are on the other houses. So this is 3 Murphy's Court with the 2-story addition they're proposing. And you see the other 1-story additions shown here. Some are heated and some are unheated. But property, years, images, details. It's expanding the living space, ground floor. It's adding space to the bedroom, closet, bathroom, second floor. Elevation view. So this would be the view from the east, the most impacted neighboring property owner. Right here, this addition right here. That includes the applicant's materials, and in this case, we don't know. Oh, and there's also the variance to increase the lot occupancy. It's currently non-conforming with 36%, but 35% is allowed. And they're proposing with this change to increase it to 38%. So it's only a 2% increase. Not uncommon on these lots. 35% is pretty restrictive a lot in this area of the city. So that's not unusual at all. Special exception, and it's a light near impact on adjoining property. I guess the first floor is easy. The second floor maybe is a little trickier because that's unusual for those homes. But I don't think we've got any opposition from anybody. No comments of opposition. Nobody has contacted us about that. I don't know if the applicant was able to provide or obtain anything from the neighboring property owner. 5, Murphy's Court, but we don't have anything as part of the presentation. But our recommendation would be for approval. I think it's a reasonable addition that they're proposing.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Is there anyone here in opposition to the application for 3 Murphy Court? If you're here in opposition for 3 Murphy Court, raise your hand. All right, seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owners and or applicant? Anything you'd like to say to the board? Thank you. Stand by for any questions. Anybody have any questions or concerns or?
I have a question for Lee. Would you go back a few slides to where it showed the properties side by side? Yeah. Well, yeah, that one. So is it your feeling that the character of the other three properties are not really affected with that second story addition that becomes, it becomes quite different from the other three?
Well, we'll have to go through the BAR, be approved by them. I think it's a reasonable size addition. You can see that the backyards are pretty large for these properties right now. It's 25 feet roughly. And the setback from the rear property line that's required in this zoning district is only 3 feet. So there's, so with without going back very far, I think it's a reasonable proposal. You applicant might be able to explain why they think that the additional square footage is useful for this house, but it seems reasonable to me.
One other question. Does the addition extend any further back than the adjacent properties? Intruding beyond, it almost looks like there's a line or a relatively clear line.
I don't understand how it increases lot occupancy unless it does what the has.
I think the deck that's there is part of the building footprint, so that is lot occupancy right now, and this addition will be slightly larger than the deck. I think that's why there's a slight increase.
I'd like to ask the applicant if you were able to speak to the adjoining neighbors.
So I asked the homeowner if we could get some signatures on file. She did reach out and said that she had a favorable conversation, but wasn't.
I didn't know anything about it, but I don't. Whatever the board decides. I tried to do it 15 years ago, and they didn't let me.
Which home do you own? What is the address?
Mine's 5, but I want them to do it. I did try. They would not let me do it.
You said that was could you please state your name for the record, sir?
My name is Rick Austin or Frederick Austin.
Okay, Mr. Austin,
But, that's from the ball. I don't care, They just wouldn't let me do it.
that was a VAR decision, that was an architectural
it's a
decision?
VAR decision. I didn't know.
Why don't you come on up and, please state your name for the record, thank you.
Amber Comment. So if let's go to the other side elevation. So I think in my initial conversations with BAR staff, because this is heated square footage that terminates the piazza, and this addition was done in 1980. The proposed two-story is adjacent to, or is clipping on to that 1980 addition. So they were amenable to the idea that we could add to the rear of the house here, primarily because it's so far set back from the street.
They used to cook outside. It's what they added onto the back was actually a kitchen. Back then.
Any further discussion, more questions for the applicant? Any? Motion?
I'll move for approval.
All right, Mr. K, Ms. Mr. McKay moves to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Bennett seconds the motion to approve. Ready to vote? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously, and the special exception for 3 Murphy Court is granted. Thank you. Next item on our agenda, B6. 3 Magazine Street. Mr. Austin. Thank you. B6, 3 Magazine Street, Charleston Village, TMS number 457-08-04-083, zone DR-2F, requesting a variance from section 54-301 to allow an HVAC stand with a 1.5-foot rear setback, 3 feet are required. Requesting a variance from section 54-301 to allow a proposed wall height of 8 feet and a proposed pier height of 9 feet, 7-foot height limit and 8-foot pier limit. Owners are Lillian and John Johnson. Applicant is Tyler A. Smythe Architects. Mr. Batchelder.
This is a residential property in Charleston Village. It backs up to the Charleston Day School property. You can see it on this zoning map. The applicant is proposing a 8-foot wall and 9-foot piers along the side and rear property lines in the backyard of the main. So here's another view looking from Magazine Street south, and you can see the Charleston Day School buildings for their campus, and they have an outdoor space. Yes, some type of outdoor space right in here, right behind this property, and this applicant wishes to build something to help buffer the sound from that space, the activity that occurs there. So they recently built a new building in the back of the main house, which is shown here, and highlighted areas on this image show the areas where they would like to have the 8-foot wall fence and 9-foot piers. They're allowed to have 7-foot walls and 8-foot piers, but they want to go up another foot. So, and the rear property line again is the property line that abuts the Charleston Day School. Properties on either side, 1 Magazine and 5 Magazine Street are residential properties. The side elevation of the new building, see an 8-foot fence here, and then the 8-foot wall here with the piers. View of the HVAC stand, which they also need a board approval for. And that would be, if I go back to the site plan, that HVAC stand is right here. So right tucked in between the rear building and that rear property line. That certainly is no issue from my standpoint. It doesn't really impact anybody. So I have no objections to supporting that request. So they do have a letter from the head of the school, the Charleston Day School, indicating that they support the request to build 8-foot stucco brick wall at the rear of their property, backs up to the Charleston Day School campus. But there's nothing from either adjoining property owner, and I personally don't think that it's reasonable to think that an 8-foot wall, the backs of these backyard of this house is reasonable. 7 feet is allowed by right, and that seems reasonable to me. You've got small backyards in both of the adjoining properties, and so I think I support the variance for the 8-foot wall and 9-foot piers on the back of the property. rear property line. But I don't support the variance to allow a taller wall or fence appears on the side property lines. So I think that existing restrictions are reasonable for this size yard and house and that sort of thing. So that's my recommendation.
All right, thank you, Lee. And just so I can understand, they are seeking the variance for the height of the wall on the sides.
Right.
Okay. Do we have anyone here in opposition to the application at 3 Magazine Street? If you're here in opposition, Ms. Richard. All right, we have no one in opposition. Do we have the owners or applicant?
Mike
Sir.
Belcher, the house member. I was over there today and it's the playground that's directly behind the property and it's pretty loud with kids outside. The 8-foot wall on the rear property line is appropriate and we would like to have a more uniform garden wall. We feel like that's more appropriate.
All right. Have you talked with the neighbors on either side?
We've reached out to 5 Magazine and have not heard back. 1 Magazine, which is right of the property, they are in support. I don't think they provided a letter. They plan on applying for your property line and building a 8-foot wall against Charleston Way. Further down, there's also another 8-foot wall from a house that is on Archdale.
All right. Any questions for Lee? Questions for the applicant? Discussion.
Can you explain what the hardship would be for the 8-foot walls on the sides?
We feel that it would be appropriate to have the wall at the same height. It's not a hardship, but just keeping noise from Charleston Bay.
So then Lee, what you were proposing is that there would be an 8-foot wall at the back and then it would drop to 7 on the sides?
Yeah, you could decoratively step it down. You don't have to abruptly transition, but I think decorative, that adjustment on the back corners of the wall to 7 feet.
So that it would satisfy the design concerns, I guess, of the 1-foot drop. And when you say decoratively, what do you mean?
Well, I'm thinking of the image of the, you see a taller section of a wall that transitions to a lower section, and then there's a little curve right there in the wall. It drops the level down, so it doesn't extend very far. It's just a way of transition.
Does the wall have to go before VAR? Does that have to?
Yes, this probably will have to go through at least the staff approval process.
They've approved the wall with approval pending BZA on the height restriction. The playground is not solely contained to the property, the rear property line. It extends beyond on both sides. So noise doesn't just come from the rear, it comes from kind of both sides as well. It's loud.
I tend to agree as a former student, they're building an amphitheater that runs along the backside, and you can actually stand on that top row and practically look into the neighboring yard. So 8 feet seems very reasonable, and really also on the sides. I think the other challenge too, if you transition, you know, you've got a small wing wall on the east side, how do you match that on the, not really a good way to transition that, just on the corner, I don't know.
And the best outcome is gonna be if all the neighbors go up to 8 feet.
Right, I'm sure they will.
Might make the perpendicular wall heights come in the future.
And what is there now? Is there, is
It's
it
a low, low picket wood
a
fence.
picket
that's
fence?
in pretty poor condition. I think that fence might actually be on Charleston.
But there's nothing separating this property from 5 Magazine?
Oh, there's a, I think there's some images in like, just be a between.
I guess this is the picket fence over here,
Yes, sir.
but it's in poor condition.
And it steps down on the property line by Maggie. It's all of that.
How wide is the rear yard? You know approximately how wide the rear yard is?
It looks like it's about 28, 30 feet wide, roughly. Is this dimension 14 feet?
This is 14, yes, sir. So,
32.
roughly 32.
Would an 8-foot wall at all hinder air or light with 5 Magazine?
I'm sure it will, to some extent.
Further questions, discussion, thoughts?
At the rear, I certainly understand the rear with the school. I am concerned about setting a precedent of going around the side and having some high, some low, some high, some low. That could be value affecting as well.
We approved 8 all the way around. As it's shown to us right now, it stops kind of at that addition. We wouldn't be passing for it to go all the way down the entire property line.
On the east side?
You're right on the east side and the west side.
Oh.
Actually,
The
it's
highlighted
north and
areas
south.
on this
It'd be the
map.
north and the south, I'm sorry. Just the highlighted areas are what would be approved. We're not approving the entire property line.
And this would be a wood fence that connects the existing house to the structure.
So the height on that is supposed to be also 8 feet.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, the highlighted areas are what they're requesting to be 8 feet.
Right. I just wouldn't want an interpretation that they could extend that wall further down all the way to front of the property line.
Now, I view when we receive an application and you approve something, that it's based on what they've submitted. So,
As I said before, the playground isn't limited just to these points. I mean, it kind of stretches on both sides, so noise coming from the sides as well.
I don't think 1 foot is gonna stop the noise.
The accessory,
I think it's the view, air, light, the symmetry of the community, the character of the area is super important if you're trying to enjoy your backyard and looking around.
I was
sorry,
just gonna
excuse
say, I'm sorry. I think, the the 8-foot wall on the rear seems very reasonable, but I am concerned about that neighboring property not knowing if they support it or not. That seems like a massive structure next to their house.
As we're looking at this graphic depicted now, which side is 1 and which side is 5?
The right side is 1.
See, it says wall to meet corner 5 on the left.
5 magazines.
The 5 is the more impacted
Yeah.
property.
5 magazine structure in here. We have
And
the sun path coming.
the accessory building has been approved, and is it constructed yet or not?
It is not constructed. We're going through the pricing exercise. It has been approved by.
What's the height of that building?
Is there anything with the streetscape, Mr. Batchelder?
In the aerial view, you can see that where
That's
Right. Any further questions or discussion, or are we ready to put this to a vote?
But one quick question on that. Lee, they're entitled to 7 feet on the signs. So what we might just really be looking at is either just approving the back or approving.
When you speak to Lee's comment of decoratively stepping it down, I mean, how do we kind of decipher between starting at 8 feet and stepping it down on the sides? I mean, I've seen this before, but kind of where's the line of how that decorative step down occurs? I mean, it seems like it's limited to 7 feet, you have to take a 7-foot wall into a pier. It doesn't.
Well, it seems like you could make that transition within a foot of the pier, because you'd be transitioning 1 foot from 8 feet down.
So would we be approved 8 feet for 1 foot on the side? I'm just trying to understand. It would be.
I mean, that's kind of de minimis, but I would say yes, that would be fine with me. It's the board's decision to do that.
I mean, I think I would be okay with, since they're already allowed to have the 7-foot wall, go with that. Just since we don't know, we haven't heard from the neighbor, and I think it is considerable height for them being so close.
We did share it with them, I know that the neighbors at One Magazine are in support. They didn't.
Scratch so the idea to be just real quick, I'm sorry, to transition within probably north along that wall. You're not too concerned about how that transition takes place, because even if it were present, it's still not, you're still not exceeding, in your view, the 7 foot.
I'd let the transition happen within a foot of the pier. Seems sufficient to me for 1 foot transition.
it's worth having him talk to the next door neighbor. Is that?
It's worth him having that 8-foot versus 7-foot wall, I think.
Well, I'd like to also with the transition, Lee, could you go back to the site plan? So this area over here, I mean, it's I think it's roughly
6 feet. I'm just curious if transition, like having a 7-foot wall and then transitioning, that I just feel might seem a little awkward. And again, go back to, if you have to have a 7-foot wall for this small segment, it would be coming into a, doesn't seem appropriate.
No, your 8-foot wall is only going up 8 feet on the 9-foot pier.
Correct.
What he's talking about is allowing a foot, and I'd be fine with 2 feet, to transition down from 8 feet to 7 feet. The pier is still gonna stick up another foot by itself, in both corners. Why is it so difficult?
Well, I think, I mean, for me, it's all the way, it's the length of the property, so it seems like a considerable addition to me for that wall to be there. I mean, the other side, I'm not concerned with, the neighbors already have given them verbal support. So it's just primarily that.
To the east side and the south side, would be fine at 8 feet.
Right.
But then on the west side, it would transition to 7 at some point within the first day of the fence. Then a few feet of the corner.
Between the piers.
Between the piers.
Would it change your, would it change the city's recommendation at all if we had, if the applicant had the consent of the neighbor at 5 Magazine Street?
I don't think so, because I just, again, I'm searching for an argument for variance on the side. I understand the rear, but running it doesn't change my opinion.
In your scope too, like I was saying sound, but also more, it's children. I mean, they have kind of platform areas back here. I mean, you can kind of peek into their backyard fairly easy as it is now. And I think that they would prefer more privacy there.
All right, well, it seems like we've got a couple different options here. Somebody could move to defer, somebody could move to approve the application as submitted, or somebody could move to approve a variance for the, what is the wall adjacent to the Charleston Day School, what direction? South. Move to approve the variance for the south wall and a foot or two on the east and west to transition to 7 feet,
It's the city's recommendation.
which is the city's recommendation.
I worry about allowing wall variances for no reason. Everybody could declare they want another foot. It gets to be something we don't care about. We have to care about it. There's a rule on it. And it's going to require 2/3 vote to get this variance. I'm in favor of the city's recommendation. I'd like to move to the city's recommendation.
I'll second that.
All right, so Mr. Morrison has moved to approve.
Could I just say one more thing?
Go ahead.
Well, I just.
We're not gonna shut you down.
Voice concern about everyone wanting an extra foot on their wall, but not everybody shares the property on the Charleston Day.
I understand.
Yeah.
The hardship is sharing that rear property line. I'm just pointing right from.
I hear that. I'm just not all that moved by the difference between 7 and 8 feet on these other walls. That I agree with Mr. Goodwin. Sound is not going to be stopped even by 10-foot wall all the way around. That's my concern.
And by approving the variance on that south wall, we accomplish some privacy for you without trying to get into designing your project for you.
Okay, so just so I can restate the motion, Mr. Morrison, and let's not forget, there's a request for a variance for the HVAC stand. So the motion is to approve the variance for the HVAC stand and to approve the variance for the south wall and up to how many feet
8
for
feet on-
transitional?
8 feet on the south, 2 feet. I'd give them 2 feet of transition, I'm worried 1 foot's not.
Okay. And up to 2 feet variance on the east and west sides, correct? 2 feet from the south wall
For the transition.
for the transition. Because beyond that 2 feet, they'll have to comply and be at 7-foot wall, correct?
That's mine.
Yes, okay. And so that is the motion that
Yes, I can do
Ms.
that.
Grass has seconded. And is there any further discussion? Are we ready to vote? I'd like to ready to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes. The variance is granted for the HVAC stand. The variance is granted for the south wall and up to 2 feet on the east and west for the transition to compliance at 7 feet. Thank you very much. Next item. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett is recused from item B7. Thank you, sir. B7 on our agenda, 68 Spring Street, Cannonboro, Elliottboro, TMS number 460-08-03-172, Zone GB, requesting an approval from Section 54-301 to amend conditions attached to a March 21st, 1995 BOA Board of Adjustment approval that limits the use of this property to a church, sanctuary, museum, manuscript library, or art gallery by also allowing commercial short-term rental units, restaurant, and event space uses. In 1995, the BOA approved variances to allow the subdivision of the property now comprised of 68 Spring Street and 231 Cumming Street and allow 18 dwelling units at 231 Cumming Street. Owner is the Carpella's Manuscript Library. Applicant is Vince Graham. Mr. Batchelder.
So this board was called the Board of Adjustment back in 1995 when an application to allow the subdivision of this property and development of a portion of it for residential uses came before the board. So this is the sanctuary at 68 Spring Street right here. And this is the Sunday school building, parish hall for the church that occupied the sanctuary. And it was all one lot, even though it had 2 different zonings on it, actually 3 different. It's GB, the sanctuary is zoned general business, the parking lot is zoned limited business, and the residential zoning attaches to the area of the property occupied by what was the parish hall and Sunday school building. So the board heard those requests and granted the approval with a condition that limited the use of the sanctuary at 68 Spring Street. That those conditions have been honored ever since because the buyer came along. And there must have been some contact already at that point. Buyer came along, purchased the sanctuary property, and turned it into a manuscript museum. And this is Carpella's is a manuscript library. Those exist in various places throughout the United States. And similar situation. Historic buildings, often churches, I think, were purchased for that use. And this is one of them, and so Charleston has benefited from having that museum all these years, but Mr. Carpelis passed away a couple of years ago, and so the family is in the process of making some changes, and that's opened up the opportunity for new owner of this building, and that's what's bringing this request forward today. Here's the aerial view showing that sanctuary and parking lot building behind. Now, the request tonight just concerns the sanctuary building, and there are parking spaces along the west side of that building that do go with the 68 Spring Street building, and they have an easement for access across that parking lot, which is owned by the neighboring apartment complex. Applicant is here, he can speak to his request, but just giving you a little bit of background. And back when this happened in 1995, for some reason it became very controversial. I don't remember exactly why, but there were heated discussions in the meetings. I remember that, and so I guess as a way of trying to appease some of the opponents, they came up with these conditions to restrict the use of the sanctuary property. I don't recall exactly, but anyway, that's what happened. And here we are today. So what the applicant is requesting is for the board to amend the conditions the board placed on the use of 68 Spring Street to allow commercial short-term rental units, restaurant, event space uses on this property. They have made their application to the board, presented their proposal to the Peterborough Neighborhood Association, and there's a letter at the end of this series of slides that the applicant submitted, indicating that they had a meeting in early May and voted unanimously to support the request. The other thing that's happened in the intervening years is that the city adopted an overlay for this section, this eastern section of Cannon Borough, Elliott Borough, which has a lot of commercially zoned property in it. And that overlay, and it's a property that's zoned general business, like this sanctuary property. And what that overlay does is restrict the hours of operation for restaurants that would serve alcohol, or that would serve alcohol or sell alcohol, that sort of thing, to the LB restrictions of 11 p.m. closing times. That was done because of concerns over the creeping nature of late night uses from King Street into the neighborhood. And this was a way to address that concern. So that restriction now exists on this property. It didn't exist back in 1995. But here's the letter from the Neighborhood Association indicating that they support this request. And there's also a letter from Aaron Minigan, who is the Director of Preservation Planning with the Preservation Society, indicating that they support this request. The building is a magnificent building, and I've been in there once many years ago when it became a manuscript museum, but it's a wonderful building that needs a lot of attention, and this could be the what keeps it a beautiful building in the future, this approval. So I recommend approval of this request to amend these conditions. The applicant is here. He can speak to any questions you have, or maybe give a short presentation as well.
Thank you, Lee. Anyone here to oppose the application for 68 Spring Street? Seeing none, we have the owner or applicant here?
Vince Graham, I live at 5 Charles Street downtown here. I don't really have much more to add to Mr. Batchelder. He covered it pretty well, but I'm happy to try to answer any questions. Associate Ann Tower Howell and Eve Olasov represents the Carpelis Museum, the son and daughter of Mr. Carpelis. So we feel fortunate and a little bit apprehensive to have this tiger by the tail. As Lee said, it's a magnificent building, needs a lot of attention. As stated in the application, we intend to work to preserve the integrity of that sanctuary space. The ground floor is, which has 10-foot ceiling, there could be used as small. To do significant work down there, but for the most part, maintain the integrity of the upstairs for use as an event space or a restaurant.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Any questions for the city? Any questions for the applicant? All right, Ms. Grass moves to approve. Do you have a second? Mr. Richards seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes. The approval is granted to amend the conditions from the March 21, 1995 BOA. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is B8, 46 Peachtree Street, North Central, TMS number 463-08-03-058, zone SR2, requesting a variance from section 54-301 to allow a one-story addition, bedroom, suite, bath with a 6.8-foot rear setback, 25 feet are required. The owners are Beth Phillips and Scott Poole, the applicant, Artist Construction. Mr. Batchelder.
So Wagner Terrace, existing home. I guess it's a 1.5-story home. And see on the zoning map that it backs up to a Magnolia Avenue home, 8 Magnolia Avenue. So the back of 46 Peachtree is adjacent to the south side of 8 Magnolia. And they indicate reasons for why they feel they meet the requirements. So here's the back of the home. Here's the site plan. And what this does is show you the proposed addition, the footprint of the proposed addition right here. So existing house. Here's the proposed one-story addition. So bedroom, bathroom, and that's the existing elevation. West elevation, this is proposed. Existing rear elevation, proposed rear elevation. And existing east side elevation, proposed east side elevation. So they are proposing to build this to add living space, obviously, to a home without going up, which again is, I think, an ideal situation. It does reduce their rear setback, but they do have a statement here from the neighbor at 8 Magnolia Avenue, which is the most affected neighbor to the rear, indicating that they support the request, and also have other letters of support too from this so anyway, we're not encroaching on the sides, it's just the rear setback that was the issue before the board tonight. We're trying to build more square footage on these small homes, doing it in a way that keeps the house as a one-story house. So I support the variance for a one-story addition.
Thank you, Lee. Is there anyone here who is opposed to the application for 46 Peachtree? Seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owners or applicant?
Tim Sykes, I'm the applicant, Artist Construction. First, I just wanted to say thank you to the BZA staff for all your help in putting this together, which I know it's a truly thankless job, so thank you. I do want to reiterate that we received 2 letters from each neighbor. The third house has been abandoned, so there wasn't a neighbor to get a letter from. And as Mr. Batchelder mentioned, this is an older home. It's on brick piers. The ability to put a second story on this would virtually require the owners to tear it down. I mean, it's just impossible. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions, any discussion? Any motions? Mr. Bennett votes to approve. Do I have a second? All right, Mr. McKay seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes and the variance for 46 Peachtree is granted. Thank you, sir. Next item on our agenda is B9, 257, 261 King Street, TMS number 457-08-01-050, requesting second one-year extension of a vested right that expires on July 21, 2023, pursuant to Section 54-962. Vested right pertains to a special exception granted under Section 54-220 on July 21, 2020 for a 12-unit accommodations use in the GBA, General Business Accommodations Zone District. The owner is 257 King Street Partnership. The applicant is Reggie Gibson, Architects, Alicia Reed. Mr. Batchelder.
This is the second one-year extension of this vested right. It's being requested, and the board approved the first extension, and nothing's changed since then, so we recommend that the board grant this.
All right, do I hear a motion?
Move for approval.
All right, Ms. Grass moved to approve. I heard Mr. Morrison ready to second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes. The requested second one-year extension of the vested right is approved. Thank you. Item number B10 on our agenda, 217 St. Margaret Street, Wagner Terrace, TMS number 463-10-03-020, zone SR2, requesting variances from section 54-301 to allow an addition to a house that converts a detached carport workshop building in with a 3.9-foot rear setback and 0.9-foot west side setback into attached living space, den, bedroom, bath, laundry. 25 feet and 9 feet are required. Also requesting a variance to not meet off-street parking requirements. 2 spaces are required. Zone SR2. The owners are Jane and Rob Connolly. The applicant is Mary Mack Wilson. Mr. Batchelder.
Wagner Terrace again, corner lot this time. And again, we have a one-story house with a carport / storage workshop that was constructed a few years ago by a previous owner of the property. And that was done after a board approval to replace a small one-car carport with this more substantial carport garage addition. And so what's there today is a result of that approval from a few years ago. You see the house. I guess it's a 1.5-story house, but then at the very back of this image, you see a small building that is an accessory building. It's attached with a roof, but it's still detached for our purposes. It's still an accessory building, accessory building. What they want to do is make that an attached addition to the house. So this is what they would end up with. This is a carport right now, and there's just a roof attaching it. They would enclose that area back there and make it an addition to the house. And so that's I think requires the variances to make that part of the main house. But these are nice images of the existing situation. So this is the carport, and then there's a garage behind it. And apparently the way it was constructed, it's not very usable as a carport and garage. But there is one parking space in this driveway off of the side street that you can park a car in. And with the changes that they're proposing to make, that the length of that space is decreasing such that I think it's not really a legal space in our minimum dimensions, parking space dimensions anymore. So I'll get into that a little bit later, but this is the site plan. So here's the existing condition: house, main house here, carport, garage, workshop space here, and then a small little storage space here. And there is this roof that does connect between the main house and the workshop building. But what they want to do is change that and make this a conditioned room that would connect to this interior hallway right here, and that would then connect into the house, the main house. So conditioned space all the way back, and then of course convert the workshop, garage, carport space into bedroom and bathroom space, laundry space back here. And then this is the small little addition that they would make to the carport, which shortens up the length of the parking space over here. And on this enlarged image, I've highlighted the change there. And then of course, this is the addition of the conditioned living space. This is the extension of the wall along that west side property line. And then I didn't highlight this, but this is also being enclosed right here. So those are the changes that they're requesting. And elevation, this is what it looks like. Not much of a change from the neighboring property owners. This is from to the rear of the property, so there's really no change there. And then from the, I guess this would be the west side, this existing open walkway staircase is being enclosed, and you see the changes to this section of the existing building right there. So, and more views of what they're proposing to do, proposed on the top. And then they submitted a letter from the Wagner Terrace Neighborhood Association president indicating that they had a meeting and discussed it and voted unanimously to support the request for the board. And also a letter from a neighbor at 28 Wagner Avenue, not sure where, but in 204 St. Margaret. So
She's across the street from
Yeah.
Wagner.
So I think that this is a reasonable way to add on to the house. Again, dealing with the story Wagner Terrace home, and I guess you could look at different ways of adding living space, but this seems like a reasonable way to do it, given that the carport structure is already there, and converting that into living space. So I think makes sense to me in that respect, and I support that. And I'm not crazy about this little window addition over here on the side, which shortens the parking space, the length of that parking space. I think smaller car could easily fit into that driveway, but a lot of people like larger vehicles. still, and that becomes a problem. So I think I support the request that they've made tonight before you, except for, I don't think this addition should be included. That'd be my
And I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying about that last part of it. The addition of that window shortens the potential single parking space so that it is only good for little cars and not good for.
Yeah, medium little cars.
Yeah.
What is the dimension or whatever? What is the length of that?
Well, a parking space is supposed to be, I think this is, the current building is 18 feet, I think, from the side property line. Parking space is supposed to be 18 and a half feet. So, but with this addition, which I'm having trouble, I think that's a 2-foot addition. So if it's 18, it would drop down 16.
Is there anybody, we've received the city's recommendation to approve the variance with the exception of the carport jut out. And so, do we have anybody here opposed to the application for 217 St. Margaret Street? No one's here in opposition. Do we have the owners or the applicant? Anything you'd like to address? I think there's a question about the parking.
We are totally fine.
Could you please state your name?
I apologize. I'm Mary Mac Wilson. And just a little background on the carport, it's 10'7", the inside dimension, and the wall on Dan North is 15 and a half inches from where the door is. You can't park in there and open your door. So that is our issue. The bay window that sticks out, we are totally fine with handling the design another way and accommodating all cars. It's not a problem.
So would we not need a variance request if we do away with that?
Right. Well, no.
So then
We're
They
only
would
have
have
two
required to have
spaces.
two, and this
That's
allows
true.
No,
one.
no, I
Right.
meant, yeah,
The
just,
variance request changes.
just for one.
One,
Okay.
2-car variance to 1 car.
Okay.
Because you can only fit one car on what's shown as the parking pad, is that right?
Yes, and technically with the carport, we are able to accommodate a car.
Stuck.
Very small car. Parked.
Where do the others park currently? They don't use
They
that
park
park.
on the street.
That's pretty common in the neighborhood.
Yes, and I might also add, at the Wagner Terrace Neighborhood Association, the neighbors immediately adjacent to the property line came and they supported it. I believe that's included in the letter from the neighborhood association. I think they confused meetings, but they came and voiced their support there. And they actually have a garage that is, I think, on the property line. It's not far from it. That is immediately adjacent.
Any further questions for the applicant or for the motion?
I move approval with the city's condition, which the applicant apparently agrees with.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Morrison to approve the variance except for the bay window and the old carport. And Ms. Richards seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. Variance is granted except for the carport jut out.
So
Thank
then
you.
the variance, I just want to switch there, so instead of 2 spaces required, nothing has to change in that verbiage, it just just one space. We're just letting them have
They're
one
not,
space.
that parking variance becomes moot because they're not changing the parking area.
Well, getting rid of the bay window, the window back area, good for one.
Right, and it makes the request for the variance moot.
But they need variance for
For
two
two
spaces.
spaces. So he was saying
And
they
now we
only
still
need
need a
one.
variance for one space.
But they had that very condition
I mean-
existing before they came,
Okay.
right?
I don't think our approval back in, what did we figure out, it was 2016 or 2015, something like that. When we approved the replacement of the small carport with the structure that's there today was intended to allow a reduction in parking. Because I don't know,
There's no other aspect of your plan that impacts parking, correct? Other than the
Correct.
jut
So
out,
technically,
so,
it's a carport that's been used only to the neighbors, what they have told me to park a small John boat from previous owners for their, but never for a car.
so there's no request to have a one variance, it's just, that's the existing condition. Okay. All right, you got it? Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is B 1137 Broad Street, TMS number 4580903-121, zone to LB, requesting a special exception under section 54-511 to allow one residential unit, second, third, and fourth floors, and a restaurant use, first floor, with 793 square feet of indoor patron use area and 580 square feet of outdoor patron use area, with 2 off-street parking spaces. 15 parking spaces are required, 10 spaces grandfathered for previous office use. The owner is ADR Properties LLC, CO Mike Schuler. Applicant is William Martin Architects. Mr. Batchelder.
so the changes that are being proposed to this building result in an increase in the required off-street parking of 5 spaces over what the current use is required. And so that's what we're dealing with tonight is a special exception to not provide those 5 additional spaces. And this property, as you can see, extends from Broad Street all the way to Elliott Street. And in the front, there's a 3-story building. And then in the back, it's a bit shorter than that. But they have made their application. So here is the back portion here of the property. And then here's the middle section and the front section of Broad Street. And of course, it's been an office for many years. And read real estate. And the proposal is to convert the ground floor from its office use into a restaurant space. And of course, restore the storefront. Now here's the back portion of the property. There is parking off of Elliott Street before you get to this 1-story building that connects into the larger building. So on the right is the existing, actually this would be the first floor. On your left is the proposed first floor. And, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. So this is the existing first floor office. And right here, this is the proposed first floor restaurant. So patron space, and then kitchen space back here, storage, and bathrooms, that sort of thing. And then stairs off of Broad Street will take you up to residential unit, which would be on the second, third, and fourth floors. Top floor, third floor. The half story. So that is the request. They have been speaking to neighbors on Elliott Street, Broad Street, St. Michael's Alley, and so this is a letter from those folks indicating their support for this request. And that is the presentation. So again, we have these buildings that don't have much parking, if any, and a lot of square footage of floor space. And the request seems reasonable to me, and nobody's objected, as far as I know, to the special exception. And it's based on what the adverse impacts might be on neighboring properties. This seems reasonable that you would have a ground floor commercial use. In this case, restaurant use. It's limited business, so hours of operation can't extend past 11 p.m. And then one residential unit occupying all those above seems extremely reasonable to me. So I recommend that we approve.
All right, thank you, Lee. Do we have anybody in opposition to the application for 37 Broad Street here? Position. We have the owner or the applicant. Anything you'd like to say to the board?
My name is Julia Martin, and I just wanted to clarify one technicality. I think because we've had 2 off-street parking places, are we actually asking for a special exception to cover the 3, net 3, is that correct?
Right. All right, any questions for the city or for the owner?
What's on second, third floor, third and fourth now? All office.
Am I right that you're cutting a courtyard on, you're removing third floor diaphragm on every floor?
And so, the net, let me make sure I understand, the net effect of the request for parking variance or special exception rather is what?
3 spaces. So this is a 3-space special exception.
Questions, any discussion? Motion?
I'll make a motion for approval.
All right, Mr. McKay moves to approve. Mr. Goodwin, second of the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No one's opposed. The motion is passed unanimously. For the 37 Broad Street property, the special exception is granted. Thank you. Moving on, B12 on our agenda, 8 Johnson Road in the Crescent. TMS number 421. Thank you, Ms. Morrison is recused on this one. Thank you, sir. In the Crescent, TMS number 421-10-00-040, zoned SR8, requesting variance from section 54-301 to allow an existing fence to be extended to an 8-foot height at the left corner. The owner is Nicole Orsini. The applicant is Aspen Fencing. Mr. Vattel.
We have a home in the Crescent, and here's a map showing its location. Johnson Road, and the application concerns fence this front left corner. If you're standing on the street looking at it, it's the left corner of the house. So the applicant indicates there's a prominent grade change at this location that means that the 6-foot fence that they have in The area is shown with the blue line here, transitions to a taller fence to 8 feet in this area where the red line is shown. So this diagram illustrates that. The ground falls away and the same level fence becomes 8 feet at its highest point as a result. These are images of the property space. Here's the fence constructed, and right side views. And this is a letter from the neighboring property owner at 10 Johnson Road that states they don't have any issues with the height of the fence. And it speaks to the varying elevation of the lot. And that's the most affected neighbor. That's the neighbor that borders this section of the fence. So our recommendations for approval for this variance due to the grade change in one spot on the property.
All right, thank you, Lee. Anyone here in opposition to the requested variance at 8 Johnson Road? No one's here in opposition. Mr. Bennett moves to approve. Mr. McKay seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously. And the variance is granted for 8 Johnson Road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item B13 is not going forward, so we are at B14, 537 Savannah Highway, Windermere, TMS number 421-06-00-138, requesting a special exception under section 54-110 to allow a 2-story, 720 square foot addition, offices storage that expands a non-conforming school use in an SR2 single-family residential zone district. The owners are Jennifer and Peter Sherman. The applicant is Peter Sherman. Mr. Batchelder.
This is a Montessori school on this property. Back when it was constructed, schools were allowed in residential zoning districts, and this is a residential zoning district on Savannah Highway in Old Windermere. And so the use was fine. It went through the proper approval process, but now school use is no longer permitted in a residential zoning district. It's got to be a school overlay zone, which this does not have. So that's what makes this a use variance, or a special exception rather, to expand a non-conforming use. And again, here's a zoning map showing the property, and you see there are 2 different buildings on the property, as well as lots of space for parking and traffic to circulate. What they're proposing to do, so here's the one building, the main house on the property, then there's a school building back here right now, and what they would like to do is build a 2-story addition on front of that existing building right here. I've highlighted that footprint. So it's 2 stories, 721 square feet total. And that is the request. It's a large property, relatively speaking. It's actually, I think, several original lots combined. So we recommend approval of this request to expand this non-conforming use. And it's just office space, finished open area. have to go through the design review board, see their approval as well, but this is what it looks like. That's it. So,
All right. Thank you, Lee. City recommends approval. Do you have anyone here in opposition to the application of 537 Savannah Highway? No one is here to oppose this application. Do we have the owner or applicant? Okay. Anything you'd like to say before we get down to it? Any questions, any comments?
Lee, you said it does still have to go to the design review board? DRB. Right.
I'll make a motion for approval.
All right, Mr. McKay moves to approve.
I'll second.
Mr. Bennett seconds. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes. The special exception is granted for 537 Savannah Highway. All right, finally, last item on our agenda, B-15-343 Folly Road, Cross Creek, TMS number 424-00-00-022, requesting a variance from section 54-204 to allow the hours of operation for an existing restaurant in an LB limited business zone district to be changed from 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. Monday through Sunday, to 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. Monday through Sunday. LB limits hours to 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Existing hours are grandfathered. The owner is JAI Augusta LLC. The applicant is Quentin Young. Mr. Batchelder.
so this address is the location of the Wendy's on Folly Road, James Island. And the zoning map shows you the location of the property and the zoning, which is limited business. This lighter red over here on this block, the Wendy's is part of this limited business. And the first two properties moving north on Folly are limited business. And then beyond that, it transitions to a general business zoning. So the McDonald's, it's up the street, is zoned general business, and this restaurant, but Wendy's, which has been here since the late 70s, is limited business. And back in the 70s when this was constructed, they allowed drive-through restaurants in limited business. We don't anymore. The hours may not have been restricted, or maybe there was this ambiguous restriction about hours of operation being normal business hours. But the city did approve the first business license for this Wendy's in 1979. I've got it right here. And it actually was approved to operate until 12, it says PM, obviously that's AM. So that's the grandfathered hours of operation for the restaurant, because we now have an 11 p.m. closing in limited business. But what the applicant would like to do is allow the hours to extend past midnight all the way to 2 a.m. So when this first came before me, or caught my attention, was back in December. When this Wendy's, and I think a few others maybe in this area, had been purchased from the franchisee that owned them for many years by a new franchisee. And they had to submit for their business license application. And that's when it came to my attention that they were requesting hours that went beyond what the grandfathered hours were. So since then, I advised them that they would have to comply with the hours, and they've been complying with the midnight closing, but they want to change that. They talked about trying to rezone the property, but the city said we would not be willing to rezone it to general business to allow the later hours. So this is their last resort on extending the hours past midnight. And when I first caught wind of this, they submitted an application for business license to stay open until 1 a.m. And now they've asked for 2 a.m. 2 a.m. seems pretty consistent with what they have in their most of their restaurants in this area, but there are some that are more restricted. And it seems to be that maybe 1 a.m. is an appropriate closing time rather than 2 a.m. That's a little bit easier to, I think, to support a variance for. And the other thing about this is, of course, Wendy's is not a business that sells alcohol, so that helps, I think, for the later hours. And so I would be supportive of a condition of approval, at least till 1 a.m. Later if the board's inclined, but at least till 1 a.m. With a condition that this property is restricted to not having a business that doesn't, or to having a business that doesn't sell alcohol with these hours of operation.
Would carry
Right.
to future.
Right. Don't know what the future holds. They
Right.
plan to be there for a long time, but you never know.
All right, thank you, Lee. So the city's recommendation is for approval of a variance, but not quite as far as the applicant has sought. The city would recommend that variance to close at 1 a.m. with the condition that there will be no alcohol sales at this property. Is there any opposition to the application for 343 Folly Road? No opposition. I assume you're the applicant or the owner? Or both? Okay. Anything you'd like to say with the board or address any issue that Lee's raised?
First, just thank you for your time. On the application, board was requesting that Sunday through Thursday was 1 a.m. and Friday and Saturday was 2 a.m. closed. And that's what we have currently in all of our restaurants. We have the company itself, we have 88 restaurants in 4 states. So when we purchased these 2 restaurants here in Charleston, altogether in Charleston, we have 12 restaurants. Wendy's restaurants that we're building in 13. Purchased that restaurant, the owner, the previous owner, hours of operations, those hours. So, that was part of us purchasing those properties. And as we said, thank you, when the application was submitted, that's when we found out that he wasn't in compliance. We didn't find that out until the application. But anything that you all approved with, that's going to make sure that we are in compliance. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And your name again?
It's Quentin Young.
Quentin Young, Mr. Young. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thank you.
Mr. Batchelder, are there, this is anybody else up there, besides businesses around there, are there any residential churches or anything that can be affected by the difference between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. closing time?
Well, this is an apartment complex back here. I think this may be a church over here. And then these are all commercial uses across Folly Road with residential properties behind them.
And McDonald's, you said is permitted until 2 a.m. and is any properties away?
So I believe this is McDonald's right here. So
And then Arby's, what is their?
Arby's, they'll be, and I don't think they stay open late. Their hours indicate that they don't stay open late, so I'm not aware of them doing that. They're not an early morning place either. So.
Mr. Young, can you restate those hours that you use at your other restaurants?
Yes, we open at 7 a.m. and that's Sunday, well, 7 days a week we open at 7. Sunday through Thursday, we close at 1. And on Friday and Saturday, we close at 2.
Thank you.
Mr. Young, you employee of Wendy's?
Yes, sir, I am the director of all the 12 restaurants here in Charleston.
All right, any further questions or discussion or?
I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
I make a slight modification, I think, from what you proposed. I think, so my motion is for approval with the conditions that closing time is Sunday through Thursday, 1 a.m., and then Friday and Saturday is 2 a.m.
All right, that's the motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Can I?
Sure, you
I'm
may,
sorry.
yeah.
No, I just wanted to add to make sure that we add the, about the alcohol. No alcohol transferring with
Yes.
property.
Yeah,
Or
modification
however
to the conditions that we had is that, I would agree that no alcohol sales is a condition.
Thank you, Ms. Grass. Good catch. We will add that to various requests, various motions. So just to restate, the hours would be open until 1 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, Friday and Saturday night until 2 a.m. and alcohol sales prohibited at this property. Okay, so there's your motion. Do I have a second? Mr. McKay has seconded that motion. All in favor, please say.
Before we
We
vote,
got more.
I just, for the record, I want to say that restaurants today, because of the COVID and because of everybody's eating habits and that kind of thing, I think it's appropriate the direction we're going and where y'all are going. So I just want to add that.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. All right, are we ready to vote? Or any further discussion? All right, sounds like we're ready to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes. The variance is granted. People who are hungry at 2 a.m. can now have a place to go on Folly Road. Thank you. All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Right.
Howell, did I miss something on that? I feel like on the parking variance, because I felt like that they had a space before. And I understand that 2 spaces were required, but whatever they had,
They just
they had.
told me the way it was written.